found blood everywhere, and of course found Travis' body.
He's dead. He's in his bedroom, in the shower.
Okay, how did this happen? Do you have any idea?
No, we have no idea. Everyone's been wondering about him for a few days.
She said that there was blood, so is it coming from his head? Did he cut his wrist?
It's all over the place.
The crime is brutal. Multiple stab wounds, a slit throat, and signs of a fierce struggle. The nature of the attack suggests this was no ordinary crime.
When you walk into a homicide scene where there's 27 stab wounds and defensive wounds and a gunshot wound to the forehead, you know that there's rage and jealousy and some very intense emotion behind that action. That's personal.
As the investigation unfolds, detectives begin to piece together the last days of Travis's life. What they uncover is a story of a complicated relationship filled with passion, jealousy, and escalating tensions.
She wanted Travis. He broke up with her, so she says, I'm gonna move states and be closer. And it just kind of was maybe a little bit of a foreshadow that she was going to go to extreme lengths to get what she wanted.
It's clear that this was something that was prompted by jealousy and rage and the narcissistic notion that if I can't have you, no one can.
This is the story of Travis Alexander, a case that would eventually capture national attention and reveal the darker side of love gone wrong.
Phoenix is the capital of Arizona, and until the arrival of air conditioning, Arizona was a very underpopulated place. But now it's been filled with all kinds of university people, tech people, young entrepreneurs. It's a big mix, it's a big city.
Mesa is the biggest city in the valley outside of Phoenix, and so there are a ton of people that live there. It's very populated, it's more than 1 million people.
As the years have gone on, there's been a lot of movement from the northern area to the west and Mesa. So it is an area where they do have crime, but your typical property crimes, certain crimes that affect people such as muggings and break-ins to cars and so forth.
Travis Alexander was born on the 18th of July, 1976 in Southern California. Known for his strong faith, Travis was a dedicated Mormon and passionate about his career in sales and marketing.
You know, what's certain is we don't know what day is our final day here on this earth. But what is certain is that tomorrow is one day closer.
Travis Alexander had a very rough go of it in an early life. He was one of many children. His parents were on drugs, and finally he ended up in the care of his grandparents.
Travis had a close-knit group of friends and family who described him as driven, outgoing, and full of life.
Religion was a centerpiece of his life, and he was very generous and giving in the community. He was a salesman, but he also drove a bus for elderly people and school children, so he was just a nice guy.
But in 2006, a new chapter in Travis's life begins, as he meets someone who would soon become a significant but complicated part of his world.
Travis and Jodi Arias met in September of 2006 at a work conference in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Travis had an extra ticket to this work conference, and there were people in the company that said, hey, we're looking at this woman named Jodi. She's cute. I think you'd like her. Would you want to give her your other ticket?
Jodi Arias was born on the 19th of July, 1980 in Eureka, California.
Palm Desert is where Jodi grew up. It's part of the Gulf corridor of the desert cities in the Coachella Valley. And it's a little hotter than Palm Springs. It has more golf courses than Palm Springs. There are a lot of service jobs there, but a nice community.
Many challenges mark her early life, including a troubled home environment.
Her parents were divorced when she was young, and she was left in the care of her mother, who struggled with addiction. Jodi has said that she was sexually abused by her older brother and experienced emotional abuse from her mother.
She was very intelligent, she was a good kid, but when she became a teenager, she started to get a little bit more rebellious. And that's not uncommon for a teen, but her parents would eventually tell detectives that she was caught growing marijuana in her room as a teenager.
Jodi had dreams of success, and while she tried her hand at various careers, she struggled to find stability. Despite these difficulties, those who knew her saw a determined and resourceful individual.
Jodi dropped out of Wairika Union High School in the 11th grade and later attended college just for a brief period. She had worked as a waitress and a receptionist and a salesperson before starting her own business.
She had had some financial struggles in the past and saw Travis as this man, this bachelor who had it all together. He had a great job, he was financially stable, and so you put the two of them together and it was like fireworks at the beginning.
So here's Jodi, a high school dropout, at this conference meeting this good-looking, dynamic man. She fell for him immediately. She said she loved his sense of humor. They did a lot of things together. They spent a lot of time together right off the bat.
Their relationship starts like many others, full of excitement and promise. But over time, it will become clear that something darker is at play.
At first, their relationship was a good one. They would do things together. They seemed to be in love with each other. But as time went on, people said that they could see how Jodi was really trying to change Travis.
Even with technology, it's hard to maintain a long-distance relationship, but that's what they did. She was in California, he was in Arizona, but they met in California frequently. They talked a lot. They evidently sexted a lot. And this, of course, the basis of very sexually intense relationship. And this went on for perhaps 5 months.
The two of them would have this long distance relationship. And so they were meeting up at different places to basically spend time together and have sex.
Good Mormons are encouraged to keep journals. And Travis Alexander kept a blog, which I guess was a kind of journal about himself, what he aspired to be, what his childhood was, the obstacles he had to overcome, being very candid about it.
It was on that blog that he divulged and admitted that he had betrayed his faith and that he had crossed the line and had premarital sex.
The happiness and the kind of fantasy relationship that the two of them had lasted for a bit. But Travis had some inhibitions with the fact that Jodi was not who he pictured as his wife. He wanted to lean into his religion, he wanted to lean into the Mormon faith, and so for him, she was not the person that he was going to marry. Jodi wanted to be Travis's wife. So that became a bit of a strain in their relationship. And Travis knew that he probably needed to cut this off if he wanted to pursue a woman to marry who had morals and values like him.
To have the kind of relationship that Travis Alexander did with Jodi Arias, which was a very passionate and intensely sexual relationship, would naturally prey on the mind of anybody who thought of himself as a good practicing Mormon. And I think he believed himself that. He had a hand in getting her baptized into the church, but that still didn't change the nature of a premarital sexual relationship. And I think maybe in his mind there was always the sense that I can love this woman, but the relationship is wrong.
With Travis's death, investigators are on the verge of uncovering something far more sinister. What they soon will learn about Jodi Arias will leave them questioning everything they thought they knew about the case. With Travis's death, investigators are on the verge of uncovering something far more sinister. What they soon will learn about Jodi Arias will leave them questioning everything they thought they knew about the case. The investigation into Travis Alexander's death begins peeling back the layers of his relationship with 28-year-old Jodi Arias. As detectives uncover new details, what seems like a troubled romance starts to expose much darker intentions, ones that push the case into terrifying new territory. With each revelation, it becomes clear that this is more than just a passionate affair gone wrong, but the prelude to a deadly obsession.
Even though at the beginning the pair seemed to have the ideal relationship, what Travis likely didn't realize is that he was in the clutches of a true sociopath, a narcissist who would stop at nothing to manipulate and lie and do anything within her power to get him and keep him exactly where she wanted.
In a bizarre twist of events, they break up in their long-distance relationship, and then Jodi moves to Mesa, Arizona to be closer to Travis. So it's one of those situations where Jodi had this manipulative, kind of controlling spell over Travis. And as much as he said, she's not the right woman for me long term, she seemed to just pull him back in every single time. And so they were still having this sexual relationship on the side, even though they had broken up.
Once Jodi moves to Arizona, she begins to exhibit the kind of behavior that, frankly, we associate with male stalkers and relationships that sometimes end with the "if I can't have you, nobody can."
Travis's friends told ABC's 2020 that they had noticed red flags with Jodi early on in the relationship. They said that they'd been alerted to Travis and his concerns, and that they had even grown concerned for his safety of things that had grown toxic and volatile between the two.
All of a sudden, Travis's tires were slashed. No one knew who did it, but they all suspected that it was Jodi.
Friends would eventually tell detectives that Jodi exhibited some odd behaviors, but they didn't think of it as overly concerning, maybe a little crazy, but they didn't think this little woman could do anything more than that.
His friends said Jodi would show up at his house unannounced and let herself in through the garage door because she knew the code.
At one point, he may have changed the code, or she couldn't get in the door, and she went in the doggy door. So it was clear that her obsession had reached a feverish level, and that she was going to immerse herself into Travis's life and his world come hell or high water.
Travis's friends are really getting worried about that, maybe more so than Travis, telling them, I guess, at one point, according to one account, that they're worried that he's going to end up in her freezer one of these days.
As detectives piece together the evidence, a complex narrative begins to emerge. The investigation focuses on those closest to Travis, examining their relationships, motives, and opportunities. Slowly, the pieces begin to fit together, revealing a story of intense emotions and a relationship that had taken a dark turn.
This kind of cycle went on for a little bit where Travis was living this kind of double life, but they were doing a lot of activities together. They'd go adventure together and things like that, but that only could last so long. So they eventually break up again.
And she leaves town. She moves back to California, to Wairika, where her family lives. And Travis thinks, well, that's done, that's all over, I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Travis is ecstatic. He's thrilled because he's finally rid of this baggage and the weight of having her in his life, even though they're not together.
They break up and Travis is relieved. You know, she's moved back to California. She's not going to be here to reel him back in again. And so he's telling friends, you know, I can really focus on our religion. I can go back to those values that I believe in and move forward that way.
Here's where Travis' self-reproach comes in, because it's not a clean break. He's still in touch with her. The sexuality of the relationship is still there. They're still in touch. They're still sexting, so having a sexual relationship virtually. And of course it troubles him. And even though he's telling his friends it's over, it isn't.
One of the hallmarks of a narcissist and a psychopath or sociopath is that they can be extremely jealous, especially when they have set their sights on one particular person, as Jodi did with Travis. that becomes a problem because the person who is jealous really does not like anyone else interacting with or taking time and attention away from them. They have to be the focus of their object's attention.
Travis starts seeing other women, and Jodi catches on that he is going to Cancun for their company trip. It's a trip that they do yearly. The company chooses a location, then they get to go. Jodi was not invited by Travis on that trip. And I believe that's where this jealousy really hit a climax. Travis was actually going with another woman to that Cancun trip. And as soon as Jodi realized it wasn't her, that's when she really spiraled mentally.
Despite her physical absence, Jodi Arias' presence lingered. The lines between obsession and affection blurred, setting the scene for a dangerous love triangle. Travis's attempts to move on with his life would only fan the flames of Jodi's growing jealousy.
Once Jodi finds out about this relationship, it goes immediately to 11 on the dial of jealousy and anger. So here you have a kind of poisonous triangle with Lisa and Travis together and Jodi on the outside, furious, jealous, arguing by phone, presumably with both of them.
It was the complete dynamic that set the stage for this tragic event.
That really enraged Jodi.
Travis' brother, Stephen, was quoted as saying that Jodi was his kryptonite, the substance that could kill Superman. And whenever the final break came, it was so much for Jodi that she was determined to get to Arizona as fast as possible.
Driven by jealousy and rejection, Jodi Arias' thoughts turn dark. Her obsession with Travis takes a deadly turn, and a meticulous plan begins to form.
This is when Jodi's plan starts to come to fruition. Jodi actually goes to her ex-boyfriend's, and he gives her gas cans for a road trip. She was going to be driving from California to Utah to actually visit another man. And you're thinking, why would you need gas cans? There are so many gas stations on the way from California to Utah. Well, because she decided to stop in Arizona and pay a visit to Travis, she did not want any record that she was getting gas transactionally or if surveillance cameras got her, that she was ever in Arizona. She bought gas in California, she bought gas in Utah when she made it there, but in Arizona, she used the gas cans.
Here's Jodi on her headlong drive to get to Arizona, to get to Travis.
She comes in, and these two have a crazy hours-long sex session, if you will. They're filming it, they're taking pictures of it. I mean, this is a whole rendezvous for the two of them.
So it seems that whatever his sense was, that maybe if I have sex with her one last time, she'll go away, leave it amicably and leave it alone, that was not what Jodi had in mind.
A final encounter between Jodi Arias and Travis leads to a brutal crime scene, leaving investigators with more questions than answers about what really happened that night.
Because Travis traveled so much, his friends thought he was on the road, probably for work. He had missed an important call, but beyond that, there seemed to be no grounds for suspicion. But after 5 days, they thought something was wrong. They went to his house, they got in, they got a key to the master suite, found blood everywhere, and of course found Travis' body, which evidently was very grotesquely propped up in the shower.
The jealousy that prompted the murder itself was the fact that after he broke up with Jodi, Travis met another woman at work and they began dating. And they had plans to go to Mexico together.
The crime scene was gruesome. Travis had sustained 27 stab wounds, a slashed throat, and a single gunshot wound to the forehead.
This was intentional. It was intimate. It was filled with rage. I mean, it is so personal to stab somebody as is, but to stab somebody 27 times and to slit their throat and then shoot them, that's somebody with the ultimate rage. And in Jodi's case, the ultimate jealousy.
The friends, of course, called 911. Police showed up, and they asked the friends, gee, was he suicidal? Or was there anyone you know who was angry with him? And the first, maybe the only name they mentioned was Jodi Arias' name.
Oh my God. 911 emergency?
Hi, this is AJ with the transfer. She's calling from one. Ma'am, is that correct?
Yes. Uh-huh. Okay, that's one in Mesa? Yes. Okay, what's going on? What? What's going on? A friend of ours is dead in his bedroom. We hadn't heard from him for a while. We think he's dead. His roommate just went in there and said there's lots of blood. I didn't go in, but I can give you the phone to someone who went in there. Yes, please, can you?
Hello.
Hi, so what's going on?
He's dead. He's in his bedroom.
Okay.
In the shower.
Okay, how did this happen? Do you have any idea?
No, we have no idea. Everyone's been wondering about him for a few days.
She said that there was blood. So is it coming from his head? Did he cut his wrist?
It's all over the place.
Hold on just a moment. Okay, you're a good friend of Travis's, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has he been depressed at all? Thinking about committing suicide? Anything like that?
I don't think he's been thinking he committed suicide. He's been really depressed because he broke up with this girl, and he was all upset about that. But I don't think he would actually kill himself over that.
Has he been threatened by anyone recently?
Yes, he has. Okay. He has an ex-girlfriend that's been bothering him and following him and slashing tires and things like that.
And do you know the ex-girlfriend's name?
Do you remember it? Yeah. What's his ex-girlfriend's name? Ask Taylor. Her name is Jodi.
What happens after they place the 911 call is typical of what would happen in any homicide scene or call. You would have the police arrive, cordon off the crime scene to protect the scene itself from contamination and destruction of evidence. Obviously, when they got into the bathroom, with 27 stab wounds and 1 gunshot wound to the forehead, it's a very bloody scene. So the likelihood of finding some sort of DNA or fingerprint evidence is very high.
Travis's death sends shockwaves through his community. The brutality of the crime, combined with the seeming normalcy of his life, make it all the more unsettling. On June the 9th, 2008, a group of concerned friends make a shocking discovery that will change their lives forever. After days of not hearing from Travis Alexander, they decide to check on him at his home in Mesa, Arizona. When they arrive, they're met with a horrifying sight.
Travis is dead in the shower. He won't be found for several days. In the meantime, Jodi takes her rental car, drives to Salt Lake, where she meets up with a man that she had been seeing, who notices that she looks very different. Her hair is no longer blonde, it is no longer long. She's dyed it brown, and she has lots of cuts on her hands. She turns in, ultimately, the car that she had rented for this journey with something nearly 3,000 miles on it, and the clerk noticed red stains in the car, which were never tested because the car was cleaned before there was any need to examine this car, any reason to examine this car. So Jodi's on her way. She's tried to perhaps cover her tracks by placing several phone calls to Travis' phone as if, Travis, where are you? What's the matter with you? Are you okay? To make people think that she thinks that Travis is still alive.
They don't immediately look at Jodi. In fact, Jodi actually calls police and says, hey, I was a close friend of Travis's, I'm happy to help. It wasn't until some of Travis's friends brought up the fact that they believed Jodi could have killed Travis that police started looking into her. And she would come down and they would do these interviews with her, and she'd almost turn on that flirtatious charm with them, laughing, things like that. And, you know, they had to present her evidence as they gathered it, but it was hard because she did not seem concerned for what was going on. She would answer their questions, kind of even laugh with them, but she never at one point really stopped and was like, oh my gosh, they're about to arrest me for murder.
I don't think you would admit to it if your own mother saw you do this and she told me, yeah, I saw her do this. You would say, no, it wasn't me. Why won't you admit to it?
I just can't. I didn't kill Travis. I just didn't. I did not take his life.
Did you have anything to do with the death of Travis?
I don't think I had anything directly to do with it, but I feel responsible somewhat for it.
Despite her initial cooperation and seemingly innocent demeanor, police begin to uncover a different story, one marked by jealousy, manipulation, and a calculated effort to cover her tracks.
When you have a bloody crime scene, you generally have an abundance of evidence. The key is to preserve that evidence and collect it properly, which is what the police did.
A bloody palm print was discovered along the wall in the bathroom hallway. It contained DNA from both Jodi and Travis.
That tied her directly to the crime scene.
Perhaps the most significant piece of evidence that framed the nature of the crime as well as the time was that Travis had just bought a digital camera, and police found it in the washing machine. There was evidently an attempt to destroy it, and with good reason.
Jodi has a digital camera with them during this, and there's evidence of the two of them in sexual positions in pictures that they're taking of each other. She's taking pictures of him posing in the shower, different things like that. And the unique thing about this camera is it has the date and the time stamp.
The evidence against Jodi Arias is overwhelming. From a bloody palm print to a digital camera hidden in the washing machine, it all paints a chilling picture of premeditated brutality. The once blurry lines between victim and perpetrator become undeniably clear.
When they were able to recover images from it, they found from that afternoon of June 4th pictures of Travis and Jodi in sexually suggestive poses, which does lend itself to the theory that he was having consensual sex, make-up sex, or break-up sex, but also inadvertently about 5:30 that same day, so you have a span of several hours of physical encounter, a photo accidentally taken of his body, his murdered body. So the camera spoke for him from his own grave.
I can't imagine that anyone would photograph the evidence of a brutal murder and then not take that evidence, in this case the camera, either the film or the digital images, with them. That just is almost preposterous, except that maybe she knew nothing about police procedure and just didn't realize that they were going to check everything, every inch of that home. But it really is unusual for someone to purposefully leave something like that at a crime scene.
On the 9th of July, 2008, Jodi was indicted by a grand jury in Maricopa County, Arizona for the first-degree murder of Travis. She was arrested at her home 6 days later in California and was extradited back to Arizona on the 5th of September. Jodi pleaded not guilty on September 11th.
Jodi Arias changed her story 3 different times. At first, she told investigators she was never there. She wasn't in Travis's apartment. She was never in Arizona at all. Then, as they started to present her with this evidence, well, your hair was found at the scene. There was blood all over the bedroom, blood in the bathroom, and now we have this digital camera that shows you were there. This is you in the pictures. How do you explain yourself? Then she changed her story to there were masked intruders that came into the home. They killed Travis. They threatened to kill her. She hid in the closet. And then eventually, as this went on, and detectives said, your story is so far-fetched, there's no way this is true. So eventually, she then concedes and says, well, I did stab him, but it was in self-defense. Travis was abusive and I had to protect myself, and he kind of looked at me as like a prostitute, and so he abused me in this way, and I had no other option but to defend myself in that situation.
On July the 9th, 2008, Jodi Arias is indicted for the first-degree murder of Travis. Her arrest marks the beginning of a legal battle that will captivate the nation, in which Jodi will continue to weave an intricate web of lies in an attempt to escape justice.
Police knew very well that Jodi had been in Arizona since March of 2008. They knew very well from the camera evidence that there was no intruder, no other evidence of an intruder. But her claim about domestic abuse, that she was being abused by Travis, is the one that her attorneys would pick up and take into the courtroom in her murder trial.
In this day that we live in, it's really a fascinating thing, because the way criminal trials were reported 30 years ago was very different. And then court TV came along, and you could bring cameras inside the courtroom, and then they devoted a whole 24-hour channel to televised trials, which really changed things for the American public.
This is a trial unlike anything I've really seen. You had people flying in from around the country just to be here to sit in the gallery to watch this trial. And I think it had these elements that not every case has. First off, you have an alleged female killer. It's all surrounding jealousy and rage and a relationship gone wrong. You have a Mormon man who was living a double life, having this crazy sexual relationship with this woman who was manipulative and controlling and had this kind of fantasy he wanted. And then you have this brutal killing that goes far beyond just a quick gunshot wound or one stab wound. I mean, this was something that was so heinous that I think people thought, how could this woman we're looking at that's small and petite do something like that?
Suddenly, it's a national, even an international sensation. The judge, the trial judge, did not want to televise this, but was overruled. And so the Jodi Arias case was on television. But that wasn't enough. People flew in from all over the world to stand in line to wait to sit in that courtroom.
The trial of Jodi Arias unfolds with much spectacle and intrigue. As the courtroom drama plays out, the public watches in disbelief as Jodi Arias takes the stand, spinning tales of self-defense and abuse. But the prosecution's evidence and the testimony from those who knew Travis paint a starkly different reality.
The case itself was one of those really sensational moments in the American justice system, like the O.J. Simpson trial, akin to some of the other high-profile trials that have happened in the last 25 years that have been televised. It's brought it into everybody's living rooms and into their lives.
The media spectacle raised questions on the impact of such coverage on the fairness of the trial process and potential influence to the jurors' perceptions. The explicit and graphic nature of the evidence presented, including crime scene photo and autopsy photos, led to debates on the appropriateness of broadcasting such materials.
Throughout the trial, the public watch as a web of lies, manipulation, and deceit is unraveled, exposing the events that led to Travis's tragic end.
She spent 18 days in the witness stand, unprecedented, her lawyer said, unheard of. And of course, that long on the witness stand is a means of unraveling alibis and statements as well.
Defense attorneys don't want their clients to ruin the case for them. And you're running the risk of that liability if they go and take the stand, because you don't know exactly what they're going to say. But Jodi was full of odd and maybe unexpected moves. Even when she was arrested for first-degree murder, she sat in the interrogation room and started doing headstands and yoga, and then started singing to herself, and then asked if she could touch up her makeup before taking her mugshot.
He knows our needs. Fill the angel voices.
That is completely unusual. And so to think she would testify in her own capital murder case, honestly, wasn't that surprising given what we knew about Jodi Arias.
Her demeanor on the stand was very different from the behavior that Travis friends had seen, this sexually aggressive, outgoing, lively person. She wore a pair of glasses, which, as we know, often happens with defense attorneys, putting glasses on defendants to make them look studious or younger or more serious about it. She came off as more timid than you would have expected, but maybe this was part of the presentation of the defense as her as a victim of domestic violence at Travis Alexander's hands.
So the defense had a hard time proving a self-defense claim, because even if it was self-defense at first, the reality is 27 stab wounds and shooting somebody in the head after that is overkill. That's beyond self-defense. And there was really no way for them to say that was enough or needed to protect herself.
Prosecution presented time-stamped photos from Travis's own digital camera, including pictures of Alexander in the shower moments before his death, and images accidentally taken during the attack, pointing towards Jodi's presence at the scene.
That basically eliminated her alibi, or her theory that she wasn't there, that she was telling them she wasn't there. And it concretely tied her to the scene, along with other evidence.
The prosecution had this kind of high burden of proof to show that this was premeditated, because by all accounts, it seemed like it could have been a heat of the moment passion, and she could have gone there just to have sex with him. But the problem is that she was living with other family members at the time in California, and conveniently, a gun went missing from their home that Jodi was staying at in the week before Travis was killed. The casings of that gun matched the casings that were at the Travis Alexander crime scene.
There was no evidence of other people, of intruders in the house. Another element of the prosecution's case were the texts and emails showing evidence of Jodi's jealous nature, hundreds of text messages, thousands of emails, which were finally turned over to the defense by the prosecution. All of this building brick by brick the case that the prosecution was putting on, that this was a jealous woman, that this was a premeditated revenge murder of the man who had spurned her.
In 2013, after years of investigation and a highly publicized trial, the truth about what happened to Travis Alexander finally comes to light. The evidence is overwhelming, and the jury delivers a verdict that brings some measure of justice for Travis's family and friends.
The prosecution said, we're gonna go for the death penalty here. And so I think people wanted to know, was this woman that they were looking at, that they really couldn't picture doing this, going to be convicted of first-degree murder and possibly sentenced to die?
In Arizona, as in many states in the United States, if there's a possibility of someone being sentenced to death, once you're convicted, then there's a separate trial with the same jury to decide whether you're going to be sentenced to death or sentenced to life in prison under certain conditions. And Jodi had told a television reporter with some bravado, I guess, early on that, well, yes, please just put me to death. But in court, she said, you know, really, I understand that was not me. I really would like to get a life sentence. I can do something with my life. She mentioned the fact that she had donated her hair to a charity that provides hair for children with cancer so they can make wigs for them, that she could make and sell things in prison, that she intended to donate the proceeds to victims of domestic violence. So you had the same jury that convicted her sitting in judgment on whether or not to send her to death row.
Days later, the jury comes back and says, we have a verdict. The judge reads that verdict and says, Jodi Arias is guilty of first-degree murder. And you could see the look on her face in the courtroom. She did not expect to be convicted of that. Maybe second-degree murder, maybe manslaughter, but she definitely thought she got away and would not be found guilty of first-degree murder. You could see it on her face. She looked upset, she looked a bit bewildered, kind of looking at the jury. So she was found guilty of first-degree murder, but then you had to enter the sentencing phase, which happened a couple months later. And during that penalty phase is when Travis's family spoke, his sister spoke about losing this kind of rock of their family. And this was gonna be a tough feat. Does the jury decide to put Jodi Arias to death? They deliberated and came back hung. They could not decide on a verdict for sentencing. That meant they had to do the entire sentencing portion of this trial again. So they came back months and months later, and this jury comes back hung again. Mistrial again in the sentencing phase. The thing about Arizona is after the jury is hung twice on a death penalty case, that's it for the prosecution. You don't have a third try for death. And so eventually the judge sentenced Jodi Arias to natural life in prison without the possibility of parole.
After years of legal wrangling, Jodi Arias is found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Though justice is served, the scars left by this case linger, both in the lives of those who loved Travis and in the public consciousness. As a result, Jodi Arias becomes a symbol of how far a person can go when driven by obsession and jealousy.
I think one of the biggest reasons people kill other people is because of jealousy and rage. And it happens more often than people really think. When there's jealousy and there's rage, especially if there's another person involved, someone's going to get hurt.
I think we've all seen combustible relationships, and sometimes we try to intervene, sometimes we think if we do, it's only going to get worse. Travis' friends tried to intervene, and it didn't seem to stop it. He was dating women, but still having a sexual attraction and relationship to Jodi, which ended up being a fatal attraction. He could not, as the phrase goes, quit her, and she certainly wasn't going to give him up to anybody else, even at the cost of his life and ultimately at the cost of hers behind bars.
I think the Jodi Arias case just had all of the scintillating elements to make it super sensational. You have the aspect that it was a case of jealousy and rage. You have control and intimidation in a way. You have the aspect of a person who has a very high moral code, yet the girlfriend was able to break that moral code. So that's an intriguing aspect of it too. And then, of course, the fact that it was so bloody and so violent, unfortunately, is a sensationalistic part of many of these cases, and that those elements combined, those ingredients just seem to be what the public wants to read about and watch if it's televised.
The impact of this case is felt beyond the courtroom, leaving a lasting mark on everyone involved and raising questions about the destructive power of jealousy and obsession. Though the community as a whole is rocked by the loss of Travis Alexander, the true cost of this tragedy will be paid most heavily by the people closest to him.